feel like most professionals are really good at just one of those things, but you sort of advocate that they should be good at all three of them. So how do you recommend that they do that?
Well, that's a challenge. That's why I think the book is so popular. Because you look at most people that are great at marketing, they would fire themselves if they had to call leads.
Right. Hey everyone, welcome to the very first SpinSucks Fireside Chat of 2018. Happy New Year. I am Jenny Dietrich. There is this cool thing at Content Marketing World that they do, and it goes like this. The person who has the highest scores from their presentation in the previous year is invited to keynote the following year. So I personally have been known to ask for 4s in my evaluations so that I never have that opportunity to keynote, because it's kind of scary. It's close to like 3,000 people that you get up in front of and keynote. But my guest today is not scared by that challenge at all. In fact, that's exactly how he became a content marketing household name. He keynoted Content Marketing World last year, 2017. Jay Acunzo is sorry for marketing. As we all know, the information age does have a dark side. It's, trolls and people saying things behind their computer screens that they would never say in front of an actual person, and it's advice overload. We're drowning in best practices, in tips and hacks and shortcuts, and that all leads to every single one of us being average instead of exceptional. And he is a very big advocate on how to successfully question conventional thinking to do better work and to become exceptional. As the host of the crazy popular podcast Unthinkable, Jay shares stories of people who do work that seem crazy until you hear their side of the story. He believes you can do exceptional work if you trust your intuition, and I'm crazy excited to have him here to explain what that means and how we can all aim for exceptional versus average. Welcome, my friend.
Jenny, it's great to be here. I've long admired how generous you are with all the knowledge that you have bottled up and all the great communities that you've built over the years. So
thanks. Thank you. So you and I first met, I was trying to remember. I remember we were sitting at a meal, but I can't remember which conference it was.
Oh, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Where were we? I don't remember.
We were in San Diego. So I'm staring
out
the
window social media marketing?
Yeah, Queens, New York here. And it's rainy and gloomy and freezing. We were in sunny San Diego at the time for Social Media Marketing World, I think. Yeah. It was actually my first time speaking there. And I think we had a breakfast with a few other marketing friends. It was right by the water. What better way to start a friendship?
Was that gin and eggs? It might have been with Andy.
Oh, that was. Yeah.
Was it? Yeah,
it was.
That's the secret breakfast I'm not supposed to talk about.
We're
not supposed to talk about that. Shoot.
Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in here on this episode.
And we're out. So I sadly missed your Content Marketing World keynote because of flight delays and all that kind of stuff. But thankfully, they give you videos, especially as a speaker. And if anybody has the opportunity to buy the videos from Content Marketing World, I highly recommend it because Jay is there as well as some other great speakers. But because of that, I got to watch the keynote. And I was watching it while I was riding my bike. And when you finished, I was like, Robin! And then I realized, so it was awesome.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
With that. But when you gave that keynote, you spoke about being exceptional. And I love that you asked the audience, on a scale of 1 to 10, how many of you aim to be 5? Oh, really? Nobody really aims to be 5. So why is it that it's important that you talk to marketers about being exceptional, creating exceptional content, being exceptional with social media, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I feel like we don't want to be average. Nobody would admit it. And that's why I include that in my speech.
I love that.
But we so often allow ourselves to do average work. It's also incredibly easy to do average work, and easier than ever before, because if I need a best practice for doing something, whether that something is new in general, so it's a trend, or you have a few thought leaders trying to teach you about it, or it's new to you, so there's a lot of bottled up knowledge either in the past from your own company or out there because experts have been talking about it for a while. It's so easy to scoop up a best practice, a list article, etc. And I think what we fail to recognize is it cannot stop there. that's one possibility that you're getting from one expert, or thousands, or, if you're really looking at Google, like millions in under a second, right? Like, what's the best time to tweet? I think I pulled this up in my slides. It was something like 35 million results.
Yeah. And it was like 3 o'clock or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And if Google puts at the top now, 3 p.m. from some notable study, and everybody starts to realize, oh, the best time to tweet is 3 p.m. Guess what? That's no longer the best time to tweet, right? So the problem is, and this is kind of my whole thing, is we need to insert more of who we are and kind of act more like investigators in our own specific contexts, rather than act like industry experts that want to have the answer. We have to get better at finding our own. Because if you root out some of the small, subtle differences in your situation as compared to everybody else's, you'll find better answer than any generic best practice can give you. So I think the key to doing exceptional work is to figure out what makes you, your situation, your person, your team, your customers, et cetera, an exception.
Right.
And use that.
One of the examples you use that I love is the Merriam-Webster, the dictionary example. Talk about that a little bit, because they're the dictionary.
Right. I mean, I had Lisa Schneider. She's the chief digital officer of my podcast, of Merriam-Webster. I had her on my podcast, and she's really warm and wonderful. She says her team is really warm and wonderful. She says she goes to work every day laughing and learning. And then externally, for a long time, their marketing, in her words, because she's from the dictionary, she said that it was boring. Okay, we've all used the word boring, but then she said it was staid. From the dictionary, so she got a good vocab, and predictable. And so, what she recognized is the way the team operated was like in some hollow, generic sense of what you were supposed to do, what the best practice was on
right.
Automate link sharing, figure out the best time, tweet it at that time every single day, have an editorial calendar, etc. And what they failed to realize was, but in our case, we're funny and witty and weird, and we're doing all these things internally, whether we're having coffee with each other or in our Slack group, that put that on display, and we're not proactively using that at all. And so the first moment I talked about in the speech where that turned around was before Memorial Day weekend, I think this past year.
Yeah. I love this story.
I love this part of their story too, which is basically Lisa witnessed them debating internally whether the hot dog was a sandwich. And she was like, this is amazing. Like, you have to put this out in the world. And so they tweeted that weekend that the hot dog was indeed a sandwich.
And people freaked.
The internet lost its mind. Like, people were like, how could you? I trusted you. Like, the hot dog is not a sandwich. There's even this one woman that, and I won't belabor the details, but there's just one woman that like pours out this like Shakespearean soliloquy about why the hot dog was not a sandwich. But point being, they were playful and opinionated, just like they were internally. And for the first time in a long time, they resonated deeply with an audience that just kind of followed them for factoids and basics, and their follower counts exploded. Their impression totals exploded. I think they grew 6,000% year on year.
That's crazy.
Right. Off of a base, by the way, of tens of thousands. So it's not like they started from zero.
Right.
And I'm going to fix this microphone here real quick. So the point there was they had this best practice put on repeat that we all get into, and they switched not to some magical tool or secret or hack or a new best practice. The switch was they had this aspirational anchor, which they articulated to each other, which was, let's show the world how fun and relevant we can really be. And because they did that, it made the work personal. They had to raid their own context for the answers instead of some blog post somewhere. And they separated, they figured out what made them an exception. And again, that's how you do exceptional things. So I love that example. Yeah,
I love that example too. So you brought up aspirational anchors, and you talk about that. You talk about cost principle insights, and you talk really about intention. So explain sort of each of those and how that goes into being exceptional.
Yeah, I think if we back up from those even further, the whole point is, why do we cling to best practices? Why do we look at the next big thing? Or why do we have some guru tell us what we should do? I think we're like, if you visualize this wheel, we're like stuck on this wheel. It's just like today it's content marketing, then it's influencer marketing, then it's ABM, then it's AI soon to come and VR. It's just, on and on and on with this cycle where we think the best practice is going to give us the best result, and then it doesn't, but then we're like, no, but it's okay because it's this one now.
Right.
Right. And I think that the key isn't spinning the wheel faster or clinging to multiple spokes and stretching yourself thin or looking at what the visionary says is the next spoke to come up. No, the key is break the wheel entirely. Step to the side of it, think for yourself, and actually pick up the component parts. Like, what % of this new trend applies to me? Is it 0? You should be okay with it saying it's 0. Right. I don't have to be on Facebook if it's not right for my specific situation, right? So the problem, the preventative issue, or the big hurdle rather, that people get over in order to think that way, is that we are always at this information disadvantage. We don't have clarity. We're overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, you do just cling to that best practice.
Absolutely.
So strategic, right? Ginny, you're really smart. You wrote an article that says, here's how to write a great blog post. I'm just going to follow Ginny's ideas blindly. Now, of all the people you could follow, great start. But I would say, and I'm the same way. I have a smaller audience, but I would say, like, I'm not putting out answers to be followed blindly. I want people to meld that together with everything that makes them them, right? But it's hard to do that when you don't have clarity, when you don't have self-awareness or situational awareness. So the switch I'm asking people to make is to stop obsessing over everybody else's answers and start asking yourself the right questions.
Right.
And what you mentioned there, the aspirational anchor, the first principle insight, and then also the constraints of your resources, those are the 3 things that kind of make up your context that you should go and ask questions about. It's you, the person or team doing the work. It's them, the audience, and what you know about the audience.
Yep.
And then it's your resources, which is the ability to make the work happen. And those are the 3 pieces of, like, this funnel almost, this clarity generator. You can dump in a bunch of information. And if you know a lot about you, them, and your resources, now all of a sudden, all these options, you're like, oh, well, that one makes sense. That one gets through this funnel. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to launch a podcast, even though everybody in my space has yet to do so. Or I'm going to use print because I know something in this context that you don't. And so Merriam-Webster looks crazy. Every example on my show looks crazy from the outside looking in, because you don't know what they know about their context. So what I want to do is help people find clarity faster. And I think the way to do that is to ask the right questions about yourself and your team, your customers, then the resources that you have at your disposal. That makes up your context. If you master that first, everything else serves you.
One of the other things you talk about is leaning into the visceral responses, which I love, because as a communicator, people tend to go, oh, people are saying bad things about us. And oh my gosh, we have to, like, a great example of that is when Gap crowdsourced their logo, and they changed their logo and people freaked out. And so they changed it back. But when you looked at it, the people that were freaking out, were not customers, and it was less than 1% of their audience, but they still, what's the word I want? They changed because of that response. And I love this idea of leaning into those kinds of responses.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a really great story of a woman named Kathy DeMeza. She still is an environmental conservationist, and she works for an organization called RARE. And the way she in the Philippines and RARE globally operate, very, very unthinkable looking, very crazy looking. Instead of writing big essays to the government to change people's behavior and pass laws, they create what they call pride campaigns. Basically, the long and short of it is they figure out something that people could be proud of about their area, and they make a mascot that represents the animal they're trying to save. And that mascot becomes a symbol, not of like a problem, like this is a fish we should stop fishing for because it's dying. Instead, they say, this is a fish. It represents our community, and we're proud of our community. Here are all the reasons why. And they create content and music and events. It's wonderful. And they make people realize, oh, that's part of the fabric of my home, and I'm proud to be there. Now, here's why I bring this up. Again, from the outside looking in, you're like, that's crazy. That's not what you're supposed to do. That's not the best practice.
It's not a best practice, right?
Right. But what Kathy understands fundamentally that a lot of her peers do not is people are emotional, not logical. So it turns out that most of her peers rely on this principle called homo economicus. It's from economics. It means the rational human. And that's where they develop all their strategies for environmental conservation and the communications around that. But Kathy's like, yeah, but I'm living in the Philippines here around these people, and they're emotional. They love their work, they love their families, etc. And so she played to that first principle insight first, instead of this kind of conventional layer of logical, rational brains. And now all of a sudden she sees the full picture in a way others don't, right? And so she can proceed logically from there. So she's like, well, I shouldn't write an essay to the government to command and demand change. I should inspire change because people are emotional. Yeah. How do I do that? Yep. Right? And the how becomes logical, even though everyone else thinks she's creative and innovative. It's just that she's starting in a better, more fundamental place. So we mentioned the aspirational anchor. That's kind of like, what is it I'm actually aspiring to do? Like, what's my intent for the future and some kind of hunger I have?
Yep.
But the second piece of this is like, what is this first principle insight about my audience? And the response, if you address that first principle insight, is usually emotional. And to your point about, addressing
look who's in our White House. It's definitely emotional.
Right. You put a finger on something and they're like, oh my God, finally you get me. Right. And they're not saying that in the Philippines in this one case with Kathy when she's trying to save this fish species. They're not saying you finally get how to convince me to stop fishing for that fish. No, they're reacting positively and passionately to the mascot, to the Pride campaign. And so that is the signal. It's not a lot of people at first, but it's a small number of people reacting in a big way. And then the task becomes, okay, now lean in because you found that first principle insight, the thing they're actually struggling with, looking for, or going through in a way others didn't, right? So if you use a small number of people who react in a big way to your work as like the compass, as the way to direct which way you run, then all the other stuff, all the marketing things we know, all the tactics, etc. Now you just funnel all those resources and ideas in that direction. But you use your audience's passion to decide which way to sprint because there are infinite roads.
And what I really love about that is people always ask, well, what's your secret sauce? Well, the secret sauce is the people. It's the people working on it. It's the people who have figured out the aspirational anchor. It's the audience. It's not, I mean, I can tell you what we do, but there's no real recipe for it.
That's just it. It's, these things should not be they shouldn't sound like inventions out of some lab somewhere. Like all I'm talking about is, can you articulate what you're trying to do and why? Also, why are you uniquely equipped to do that? Can you articulate what your customer is actually going through, but in a really fundamental way, like cutting through all the other stuff you think to get to the foundation, the first principle. And then the third piece is, now, can you actually articulate and look in the eye your constraints? Because we aren't Red Bull or Amex in most cases. Like, if you actually embrace your constraints instead of just try to fight them, you can find ways to test out those insights in small ways, right? We want the creative field, but it turns out if you put enough boxes down on the field, little constrained projects, you cover it.
Yes.
So, again, those are the three pieces of your context: you, them, and your resources. When you're an investigator, when you're what I call a sensitive skeptic, you're perceptive and asking questions at the same time, you get to this place where you're like, I know my context so well that when Jay on Ginny's show says, I have to be on Snapchat, I can say with confidence, no, because I know this and Or I can say with confidence, you're halfway right. Yes. In my situation.
Yes.
That's the goal, is customize all of these best practices and trendy tactics and conventional thinking to your specific situation. There's too much trend following, too many glomming onto trends. Just get better at mastering your context first, and the rest gets so much easier.
Ian Cleary, right before the holidays, I posted on Facebook. I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. I probably should have asked him, but it just popped into my mind. He posted on Facebook, I get really tired of the trends and all of this that everybody's talking about right now, because it's all like, artificial intelligence and VR and cryptocurrency, but there's like no real business application. I want to know what the trends are because it's worked for you in your business. And I thought every trend article I answer from now on is going to do that.
Yeah.
You're right.
I mean, think of it this way. I am now a professional podcaster. You can say that. I didn't expect to be. I'm a writer originally. Right. And I mentioned my first book is coming out, and I'm like so excited to be a writer again. But I'm now also creating podcasts for myself and with brands. And, the mandate I have, you can kind of see it on my mug. Let's see if that comes through. Can you read that?
I just want to drink coffee, create stuff, and sleep. Mine would have, and ride my bike.
Yeah. Oh, nice. So yeah, I might insert like and play basketball or something. But so that's kind of me. Like I just like to make stuff, right? And so when I think about my podcasts, and I'm like, why am I making these? It's to deeply resonate with people. It's to scratch my own itch of trying to be a performer and a creator. It's to make other people feel something. That's what I love about the creative process is you feel something about it and then you put it out into the world and you can trigger emotions back. It's magic. And if that's all I'm trying to do with, let's say, my personal show, then all this advice out there for why I should go grow my show through more episodes and look at the Apple charts and all that advice doesn't matter at all, because in my context, that's not why I'm creating a podcast. That's not what I aspire to do. That's not what my listeners have told me they want from me. So it's like, I have confidence to look at some of the smartest people I know in the podcasting space and say, yes, good advice. I'm not operating in a generality. Here are my specifics. So I'm going to say no to that advice. And I think that's how you find clarity. It's like, it's not some magic insight that strikes. It's being willing to know yourself and your situation really well. And then being proactive about the decisions you make instead of reactive. And oh my God, if we aren't reactive all the time in this like information age, right?
Right. Constantly.
Yeah.
So I want to go back in time a little bit because you've worked for a couple of really small companies like Google and HubSpot. The first time I met you, I was like, holy cow, this guy is like, wow. So it's super impressive. Your resume is super impressive.
Oh, thanks.
But I'm curious what you've taken away from those experiences that you can lend to best practices that are specific to marketers.
I mean, I struggle with that because there's a reason I'm not at those companies. And I went through really dark nights and slow moving mornings because I should have wanted to be at both of those companies and stay there. And I had these moments where I was like, this is what you're supposed to do when you're a driven professional. You're supposed to work for, Google. This is back in 2008 where it was Mecca in tech. There wasn't the luster around startups quite yet. Facebook had been around for 4 years.
Right.
And so I was like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I want to be at Google? I should love it here. I sound so selfish. I sound like it's like the ultimate first world problem, right? But then it's like, yeah, but hold on. What about me? Like, what am I trying to do in my career? Right. I have friends that are there and I'm like, how could you still be there doing that same job? And then it's like, hold on, but if they're happy, that's all that matters. Right.
Yeah.
So it's this willingness to just, I guess, embrace the fact that sometimes the best lessons aren't going to come from Google and HubSpot. And sometimes the best lessons are going to come from a side project that you launched years ago or some, completely irrelevant seeming example of a business. Like one of my pet peeves, and our friend Carla Johnson speaks about brand detachment disorder. And that's where I've had this happen to me. And I'll talk about Death Wish Coffee, which is a coffee, very brand centric, very content centric. And immediately someone in the audience is thinking, and I've had people tell me later, yeah, but I'm in B2B and my company is this, my company is that. And I'm like, that's not the point.
Right.
The point isn't to just mimic and copy wholesale. The point is to figure out, well, can this stretch my brain to the left in a way it hasn't before? And when I release it, it'll come back to center, but now I'm more flexible and nimble. I think differently than my peers. Or can I rip out this meta level, this extraction of a lesson that I can only get if I go outside my echo chamber? Like the point isn't to copy, to follow the list, to glom onto it. All of these things are just possibilities, right? So what did I learn at Google and HubSpot? That sometimes someone else's grand success actually should not inform what you're doing if what you're trying to do is different, right? Like just because they got results doesn't mean, I should copy what they did because it got results. Their situation is different than yours. So it was more of a self-awareness learning curve for me than it was like a tactical marketing thing. Yeah.
That's, and that goes to exactly what you've been building on after you went out on your own. I mean, that it's figuring out what works for you, not necessarily what works for everybody else.
Yeah. That's my phrase. Like the biggest compliment I can receive or even give is just, man, you're doing you. Like,
yep.
I respect the hell out of you. You seem like you're doing great. Like whether you're getting huge results or you're unknown or whatever, you're doing you. And like, you get one life. So I think that's a pretty good way to live, right?
It's a pretty good way to live.
Like you're all yourself at all times.
Yeah. Great. Yes. And this is a total side note, but it's something like 80% of people are unhappy in their jobs. Why?
Oh,
why? Yeah. Quit your job.
I know. So that's what I'm trying to do with my book is called Break the Wheel. And I'm trying to do it with that. I'm trying to do it with my speeches. I'm trying to do it with my podcast. I'm trying to hand people a sledgehammer and be like, here's a sledgehammer. Here's how the sledgehammer operates. And here are the component pieces of a sledgehammer. You understand it? Okay. Do you know what a sledgehammer does? Okay. Swing it however you want.
Break it.
Do it. Yeah.
Yep. Oh.
Whatever makes sense for you. The point isn't to spin this wheel faster. Single piece of content that you feel inserts all of who you are, because I guarantee you that is going to generate way more business results than copying what someone else is doing.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, so now it's time for the speed round. The point is to answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite blog?
Wait, but why?
Ah, nice. Favorite podcast?
Radiolab.
Oh, this is awesome. What book changed your life?
That's a tough one. Anthony Bourdain, Kitchen Confidential. Because I discovered Bourdain, not because of the content. So I'm such an admirer of the way he tells stories. He's
such a jerk, but he's such a great storyteller.
The personality and I'm not like him personality-wise, but I like the skill, which is he pulls out depth of meaning and insight from the seemingly day-to-day in the stories that he tells. That's what I like to do in the working world.
Have you been to any of his restaurants?
I haven't been to his restaurants. I've seen him speak twice, and I've read just that one book, and I'm a huge show fan.
Yeah. I think I know the answer to this next one. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What was your last vacation?
Oh my gosh. Let's see. I'm going to Amsterdam with my wife in a week off the back of a speaking gig. I can't wait for that.
That city.
My last vacation was, we did a ski house in Vermont. It was our annual tradition. Ski house in Vermont. My wife and I organize it every year. We don't ski or snowboard. We cook, we play games, we hang out and have cocktails, we hike and go snowshoeing. We like the lifestyle, not necessarily being up on the mountain going down really fast. Yeah, no.
I grew up in Utah. That's all I'll
say. There you
go. What's your favorite snack?
Sunflower seeds.
Sunflower seeds.
I have this need for like oral fixation for some reason when I'm doing deep work, like writing or, producing shows or something like that, writing my book, whatever. And I just love it goes back to my days being an athlete, just having a cheek full of sunflower seeds.
Sure. Best meal you've ever had?
Best meal I ever had. Oh man. I'll give you the food answer and then the emotional answer.
Okay.
The food answer is this place called Craigie-on Main, which is in Boston. And they have a prefix menu, which was to die for. And the emotional answer is my wife and I are big cooks together. I mentioned the ski house activity. Mm-hmm. And I recreated our first meal together when I proposed to her 5 years ago. So to me, that's my favorite meal, but not necessarily the best food, right? Because I cooked
it. Anthony Bourdain didn't cook it for you.
No.
What's your guilty pleasure?
I like listening to big, cheesy, dramatic ballad songs walking alone in the streets. Like it just clears my head and I just super I don't know what it is. I don't know.
That's awesome. Yeah. I just saw an interview with Helen Mirren where she on Ellen, and she was talking about how she asked her what she likes to watch on TV, and Helen Mirren said, "I love those documentaries that go on for 10 hours and they find these bodies and you don't know where they came from, but you suspect the first person that's on the screen, but you invest 10 hours and then you find out it was the first person." I was like, that's great. So that goes along with your cheesy ballads.
There you go.
For writing, pen, paper, or laptop?
Laptop.
Mm-hmm, me too. Do you have a special software you like?
My brain's operating system is Evernote. So I do almost every writing, every text-based activity, also organization. It's all there. Although I'm a huge user of notebooks, right? That's more for like mental models and like sketching out how I'm going to do something. And
that's how I do too.
Yeah.
What's your latest binge?
Mr. Robot. Just started it. I'm into season 2, and I immediately downloaded a password protection service software because it's all about hacking. And,
You didn't have one? Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I used the same password for years.
My husband does that. Drives me crazy.
I know.
I'm like, I hope we never get divorced because I will be able to just crush you. All right. So Break the Wheel. When do you think it'll come out?
It comes out later this year. Right now I'm in the early stages of writing it. So I'm in the throes of like, I can't even think about that, but I'm targeting this summer.
Oh, wow. That'll be fast.
2018. Yep.
Wow. Yep. All right. Well, we're going to watch for it. And when it comes out, we'll have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were awesome. Your content marketing world key was awesome. I hope more people hire you. Very good. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.